Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we'll be watching Why Do Christopher Nolan Movies Feel Different from Sign Lumi, new channel to me, so we're gonna watch how is it go, and why is it that Christopher Nolan movies do feel different, because they do feel different to me, and I do like his movies a lot, and often I can't understand, a lot of times I just can't hear exactly what's going on. But it could have been because we were sitting in the last row too, so maybe that. But let's just watch and see what's going on. And let's start.
Only one man could have made this film, and only one man can bring it to you tonight.
I think you can use the word genius when it comes to Chris Nolan.
He's really is a genius.
Christopher Nolan is one of the most celebrated directors of the 21st century. In an era where studios rely on massive tentpole films based on previously established intellectual properties, Nolan stands as a remarkable outlier.
Conceptually, he's able to realize things on screen, actually put them up there in a larger and more awe-inspiring scope than any other director that I know.
Chris approaches these films, I think, in a way that's very different than most people or most studios approach these films.
His body of work frequently explores philosophical concepts and intricate narratives.
I'm a self-taught filmmaker. I never went to film school. I never studied filmmaking in any way.
Each film you take on, at whatever scale it's played out at, it's a couple of years of my life.
But what makes him so special?
And the award goes to Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan.
How does he evoke admiration?
He's making good movies.
Occasional perplexity.
Did it ever feel like this is going to be complicated for the audience? It's like,
And above all, pure wonder.
Here we go.
The following is my explanation.
Christopher Nolan's first feature film had a budget of around $6,000, made with a small crew of friends and family.
I'm a writer. I was gathering material for my character.
Just a couple of lamplights, no camera rings, no high-end sound gear. That first film was cleverly designed to turn its technical limitations into bold, stylistic choices.
The thing that I started to develop and following that I've carried on ever since that has most served me is probably cross-cutting. So I always try and intercut scenes if possible, because if you know that you're cutting the scene with these two people in here, with the scene with the guy running down the street here, you know that if you've got a gap anywhere, if there's something that didn't work, you've got a very invisible way of getting around that.
Curiously, many of those initial choices, born out of scarcity, have become an essential part of his signature aesthetic to this day.
Are you watching closely?
And motifs are everywhere in his films. He constantly uses repeated patterns to support the themes of his movies. They can be visual, conceptual, or even sonic. Just listen to this. In Inception, the totems serve as a symbolic representation of the boundary between different realities.
A totem. You need a small object, potentially heavy, something you can have on you all the time.
And the heart of Interstellar is the concept of time.
Well, every hour we spend on that planet will be 7 years back on Earth.
Time as a resource, time as a measure of the physical and emotional distance between characters. There's probably no other mainstream director today so obsessed with time, both as a concept and as a narrative structure.
I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of time.
People very often ask me, why am I interested in time? I say, well, because I've always lived in it. Yeah, right. We feel very trapped in it.
We read a newspaper, it gives us the headline version, Man Bites Dog. Then it starts to fill in all the details. And then you get another version of the story the next day, and you get more details and everything again. And I thought, why make films that just give you the beginning, the middle, and end in a linear form when that's not really the way we experience life?
I approach the structure from a very mathematical and geometrical point of view. A lot of diagrams, a lot of careful planning. This stuff is the black and white stuff. This is color, and this is running backwards as a series of jumps.
Bright windows in the film Insomnia function as a metaphor, representing the external forces that afflict Detective Will Dormer.
Will Dormer, what are you doing?
I'm trying to help you and you're running around like a maniac.
These symbolize his guilt and play a pivotal role in the erosion of his state of mind.
So far, I like Christopher Nolan's movies, but I'm kind of starting to see. I haven't seen that many of them. I've seen Interstellar, obviously, the Dark Knight trilogy. What's the one with all those people that they go into the dreams and sequences and stuff like that? What is that? Oh my god, I totally forgot what's the title of that. And what else did I see? Tenet, one of the most recent ones, isn't it? I can't remember what else did I see, but obviously last 15 movies of Christopher Nolan from the last 15 years, and definitely kinda last 5-10 years I'm trying to see in the cinemas because they're quite impressive most of the time, or all the time. But like I said, now every time I can understand what's going on, that's a one thing, but not even not understanding what's going on, but just understanding the speech on it, because often I find that the music is too loud, or the sound is too loud for the dialogue, but in general I do enjoy the movies, so let's go.
Nolan also likes to play with recurrence. But he doesn't just return to the same moments just for the sake of it.
Don't let me leave, Murph.
He cleverly employs these elements like puzzle pieces, taunting us to unravel their mysteries.
No! 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 No!
As the film moves forward, new information reshapes our understanding, infusing these moments with renewed significance whenever they resurface.
You were my ghost.
The scenes might depict the same situation, but we certainly don't experience them in the same way. For example, in Dunkirk, Nolan presents the same events from 3 different perspectives throughout different moments in time. The first time we see Collins crash land on the ocean, it appears as if he's okay. But the second time we see the same crash from another perspective, we realize Collins is actually in grave danger. One of the many reasons why Nolan's films feel so big is due to his masterful use of scale. Establishing shots are commonly used to open a scene and provide the audience with a clear sense of the geographical location.
Something, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Nolan employs this sparingly, but when he does, he deviates from the conventional norms. Instead of using establishing shots solely to set the action in a determined location, he uses them to pull out from a particular situation, revealing the sheer magnitude of events unfolding before our eyes. Something that unifies Nolan's body of work is an unwavering commitment to authenticity.
We really try and create the sensation that I would describe as virtual reality without the goggles.
All of those things help bring the audience to feel that they're there and that they're taking part in this.
He doesn't mind leaving little mistakes in his final edits to add an extra layer of sincerity. And far from the over-stylized look of someone like Zack Snyder, or the controlled camera work of Wes Anderson, Nolan seeks to create immersion through realism, or as he describes it, heightened naturalism.
The philosophy was style through naturalism in terms of naturalistic lighting. And that begins with Memento, insomnia.
I actually didn't realize Memento is Christopher Nolan's.
With a mind of this, you'll see that we basically stand by the windows the whole time. The director of photography I've worked with ever since, Wally Pfister, on our biggest films, we've basically adopted the same approach with a lot more toys, a lot more technology, but it really is a question of trying to create a sort of heightened naturalism.
While other directors like Akira Kurosawa and Steven Spielberg go to great lengths to orchestrate intricate choreographies between the cameras and actors, Christopher Nolan's blocking is straightforward and economical. No long takes, no fuzz, always to the point.
That's why you're so good at it.
We shot 360 degrees. It was basically one lighting setup and 4 characters, and I thought there was a wonderful energy and spirit to the way that we shot it. And the lighting, I think, was fine, but is it the most extraordinary Academy Award kind of lighting? No. Is it the most loose form, capture the energy of the actor's performance kind of filmmaking? Yes. And that's what Chris was looking for.
Check out how Nolan blocks this fight scene from The Dark Knight. Now, let's compare it to a similar scene from The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. The situation is basically the same. Batman crashes into a club in search of a mafia boss, fighting a handful of thugs along the way. While Reeves' interpretation is elaborate, using long takes and wide angles, Nolan's execution is unadorned. His intention is to move the plot forward as fast as he can, while Reeves wants to establish Batman's rage and fighting skills, along with his most recurrent collaborators, Wally Pfister and Hoyt van Hoytema. Nolan has managed to connect a distinctive vision with recognizable traits. He uses an abundance of silhouettes, plenty of inserts, and a strong preference for using handheld shots, even with large, heavy IMAX cameras. There's also a fondness for symmetry, arrays of repeated elements, and one-point perspective compositions.
Inception, that's the title.
I think there were
There you go.
250 lamps up in that ceiling, and that creates that very widescreen Kubrick feeling in that room. And it does hark back to the end of 2001, as does the Bat Bunker in The Dark Knight with a giant light box on the top. So there are a lot of homages, I guess.
Christopher Nolan's pursuit of authenticity extends to commitment to shoot on film, use real locations, and a predilection for practical effects.
You kind of realize when you read it, oh, how are we going to do this? Because he's going to want to do this for real.
It feels very, very real, essentially because it is real.
Yeah.
And visual effects technology has been wonderful for enhancing those things and increasing the vocabulary. But sometimes when you're asked to justify these things like not using green screen, it's so much more fun to do it. It's fun for the actors, it's fun for me. There's nothing more dispiriting than when you turn up to work and there's just a green screen with a couple of actors in front of it. It's really, the magic's not there. So trying to do these things for real, trying to use real locations. I've always preferred real locations to sets for the same reason. There's a feeling of reality, there's a feeling of being somewhere that matters.
Nolan has used visual effects plenty in his films, but much like a skilled magician concealing their tricks, Nolan masterfully hides the presence of CGI, surrounding those shots with practical shots to sell the illusion.
My sort of rule of thumb was we could do a fanciful visual effects sequence if the last shot was real, so that the editing rhythm, once Lee was able to put it together, you'd be continually alternating between something that's real, something that's convincingly photographed on set.
Do you ever have people come up to you and say, I loved Interstellar, Chris, but what was it about?
His signature style is not one without flaws. More often than not, Nolan becomes a victim of his own complexity, like a maze designer in their own creation.
Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
For a director with such control over his images, Nolan can be reliant on expository dialogue.
So they say you want to go from here to there, but it's too far, right? Mm-hmm. So a wormhole bends space like this, so you can take a shortcut through a higher dimension.
It doesn't really make sense that a pilot described as
You're the best pilot we ever had.
would be learning about the basics of wormhole
Yeah, I was
theory
thinking that too.
already halfway into the mission.
But this is for our... What's the word for it? For our understanding. Because not every viewer will understand what wormhole is and wormhole does. Like, I'm watching science fiction since I was a child. My mother loved science fiction herself, so obviously we would watch a lot of science fiction movies and shows. We still do. So wormhole is not a new invention in that. wormhole is not, it wasn't first used in Interstellar. Obviously, wormholes were used years ago. So if you're watching a lot of science fiction, you know what the wormhole is and how it works, and you hear that explanation before. But if you don't, but you do like Christopher Nolan movies, or you feel like you're gonna watch this because you like, I don't know, Matthew McConaughey, or you just think that the idea of this movie is good for you, but you don't really watch that much science fiction, and then you're not interested in physics to hear or learn much about wormholes and stuff. Sometimes some people, you know, like how you're supposed to explain, you need those explanations in the movie as well, and that must have been the best place to do it. Because although one of what I would be thinking it would be probably a bit better idea to kind of explain what wormholes are is when Murph and her dad are in, after they got to that big bunker and stuff like that, and they could have tried to make it like to explain it what the wormhole is to the girl. You know, she was a child, she might have not known what the wormhole is. Yeah, this is I kind of agree with the fact that, well, they explain the thing like, oh, the pilot who was a test pilot for spaceships or something like that, it doesn't know what the wormhole and how that works. But I'm kind of torn on it. Okay, let's just go, because I'm making mess up of my own explanation.
What's a circle in 3 dimensions? Sphere. Exactly.
His exposition problem also carries over to his character development. Rather than showing us what they're feeling, he has his characters explicitly vocalizing their motives and emotions.
The drawing is his hold over me. He threatened me with police, prison, the works.
The spark he's supposed to have with Sator's estranged wife, Kat, isn't there, which makes for a motivation problem. But her drive is primarily about safeguarding her relationship with a young son we barely see, and when we do, seems less than winning. And she's right. We only see Kat's son a handful of times in the whole film, always from afar, and we never see him talk or do anything. Nolan doesn't give us anything to care for him. Sator, the main villain, supposedly wants to take his own life and take the whole world with him, but we never get to see why he's doing it. What leads him to embark on such a nihilistic plan? Whenever a blockbuster declares, and all of humanity will be destroyed to establish its stakes, I assume it's a crutch to get us to care about the characters. But we can only be asked to care about the end of the world so many times. This lack of motivation also applies to the protagonist. At the beginning of the film, he's shown as a deeply committed agent who is willing to give his life for the mission.
What are you counting on this? Death.
If that's the case, then why does he put his whole world at risk to help Kat?
I'm not gonna let her die. I'll take my chances. There's no way of bringing you back.
We never see anything to justify this level of emotional connection.
Can't we go someplace quieter? Can't hear each other talk.
What makes you think I want to hear you talk?
Yeah. I just stopped talking, so now I have nothing else to say actually about that. But yeah, well, obviously there's always be something that not everyone likes about every movie. Every movie, even some of my favorite movies, there would be something that I don't like, or I would rather if people did it a bit differently. Obviously now at the moment, like I mentioned, they could have explained the physics of wormholes to Murph instead of, I can't even remember his name. Yeah, anyway, ads already finished, so I don't have to rumble anymore. Let's just go back and watch what else they have to say. But I kind of agree with the fact that sometimes, yeah, some things are just not perfect, but it's just a movie. Some people are gonna like those parts and some people won't like it. So you're not going to please everyone in the same way, so.
And in a style that relies so heavily on exposition, it's curious to notice how much he seems to deliberately obstruct the clear flow of information. He often places masks and even helmets on his characters.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
Muddying what they're saying. No. On the other occasions, the music and sound effects overpower the dialogue, making it unintelligible. Many of the filmmakers I've admired over the years have used sound in bold and adventurous ways. I don't agree with the idea that you can only achieve clarity through dialogue. Clarity of story, clarity of emotions. I try to achieve that in a very layered way, using all the different things at my disposal, picture and sound. Essentially, cinema is just image and sound, two parallel roads filmmakers use to express their ideas. Many directors throughout history have used sound not as a subservient link to the image, but as a channel to express independent ideas that transform what we see. In A Man Escaped, Robert Bresson frames his characters in tight shots to convey his physical and mental entrapment, while using sound to render the world beyond his confinement. For Edgar Wright, sound is not merely a tool to convey information, but an integral part of his editing and camera movement. In both of these cases, the unorthodox use of sound is motivated and has a clear conceptual intent. That's why it works so well. In this pivotal scene from Interstellar, we see Dr. Brand in his dying moments, making a huge revelation that will dramatically change the course of the story.
I lied, Murph. I lied to you.
Michael Caine delivers an impactful performance that seems to prioritize realism over delivery. And that's all good. The thing is, if the information he's delivering is so important to follow the plot, why make it so hard to understand? Rather than presenting the audience with an intriguing puzzle to unravel, Nolan often provides us with a reason to feel frustrated and bewildered.
But as liberators to return control of this city to the people.
And it's not just this isolated case. He does it time and time again.
So it wasn't just me. Yeah, there you go. See? Yeah, I actually keep saying that Christopher Nolan's movies. I think I said in one of the reactions that I did a few weeks ago as well about the Interstellar. That Christopher Nolan's movies should come with the subtitles, just for people's sake, not just mine.
To make matters worse, not all of the releases of his films sound the same, as Nolan told IndieWire that they weren't going to mix films for substandard theaters. Because of this, the experience of watching a Christopher Nolan film widely differs depending on how and where you watch it. Sometimes these choices seem less like a stylistic decision and more like a display of pure contempt towards the audience. But despite the less palatable aspects of his style, his impact on the industry is undeniable. His push for practical effects has resonated so strongly amongst audience that the no CGI claim has now become a marketing tool for many big-budget productions. Nolan's influence is such that even his much-derided sound design techniques, in particular, that otherworldly horn sound from Inception, has been copied and replicated to exhaustion. Present today in almost every film trailer out there. In a way, he symbolizes the dream career of every aspiring artist. Nolan is a creator with no formal training who went from shooting a film with friends on weekends to convincing Warner Bros. To turn his personal projects into massive multi-million-dollar films. In a time of radical changes, where the very foundations of our culture are constantly reshuffled and put into question, a time where our technological might has brought upon us an unbearable sense of disconnection and uncertainty, Christopher Nolan's work has struck a chord within popular culture like very few creators of our era. Maybe there's something about his themes, his reflections on the inevitability of time, the fickleness of memory, the promises of outer space that mirrors our society's desire to escape the noise of our everyday realities. Or maybe there's something in his excessive aesthetic that serves as a tempting invitation to create a reality of our own.
That was... Oh, look at this. Is Tarantino overrated? Well, I initially would say yes, because I don't really like Tarantino's movies that much, but then I haven't really seen, because I keep saying that, so maybe I should watch them before I actually agree with any statement like that. But that video was really good. Cine Lumi, really well done. A lot of interesting points on that, and it's not just like, oh, it's just the greatest part. It's just kind of pointing out the flaws as well, what's really good. I don't like when someone that just goes and it just praises everything. So yeah, and I was always talking over the ad breaks and some over the video. So yeah, I don't really have much to add now after this video. It's really well done, and I enjoyed it. So thank you very much for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye.